the more you learn, the more confident you are to speak on the topic, and the more you can share about it. And that is the most impactful way to approach conservation, is to kind of find what you're passionate about and learn about it, and then share about it. Because your passion is going to shine through, and people will find it inspiring.
Good morning, everybody. We are going to go ahead and get things kicked off. So go ahead and introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Tessa Skiles. I'm the Conservation Programs Manager at a statewide land conservancy called Conservation Florida. I am also a documentary filmmaker and underwater cinematographer, photographer, freediver, and cave diver.
You do quite a bit. It's pretty awesome. And I know for me personally, like, I've been following you for a very long time, and then through that and through social media, honestly, we've kind of become pretty good friends. And you're always my go-to whenever I have a question about conservation or the springs or wildlife or anything like that. I always will message you when I have my burning questions at midnight, 1 in the morning, and you always respond. And I always appreciate you and the resource that you are and provide for people.
It's a pleasure, honestly. We have great conversation. You
Yeah.
always have the best questions, and that's part of the reason that I'm so excited to be here today and be on your podcast. I've been so excited about this, that you've got the Power Perspectives that you've gotten started, and it's an honor to be here.
It's well, I appreciate you coming out, and excited for our conversation and to learn more about you and what you do. So there's probably a manatee over here.
That's why everybody's
crowded up,
congregating.
Which is pretty cool to see this time of year, because we don't typically see them out here when it's warm out. But
they know where the food is at.
yeah.
They want to stay in the springs. It's why they're so important. Yeah, but they should be out in the ocean at this point in time.
It's much warmer out there. I don't blame them, but
But the food is here.
yeah.
In the few places that we do have healthy vegetation left in
Habitat
our springs.
for 'em, yeah.
So Silver Springs is one of them.
Yep. Share a little bit about like your upbringing, because I know that you honestly were kind of born and raised in the Florida springs and conservation world. And so I'm just really interested to learn more about that and kind of how you got into conservation in Florida.
Like you said, I was born into this. I was raised in a family of explorers and conservationists from a very, very young age, about 8. Ooh, yep, we have a green heron. These guys are, I love their little attitudes.
Yeah.
They have the biggest attitudes out of any springs bird, in my opinion. They get really territorial and very vocal when you intrude on them. And for that, I respect that. Whoa! Did you see that?
The cormorant flying?
Yeah, that was really close.
Did he get close to us?
Oh my gosh, right over my head.
I just saw him flying, but I didn't
I wonder if that was in the frame.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is why I love silver. It's the most biodiverse spring system out there, in my opinion. I mean, it's incredible.
I would agree with you.
Just the density and the biodiversity is just incredible. To get back on track,
Yep,
I was born into conservation. My father was a world-renowned cave diving pioneer, National Geographic explorer, and first and foremost a conservationist. He came into the sport of cave diving when really it wasn't an established sport at all. There was no certification to become a cave diver, and he was exploring the springs when nobody was really even swimming in them very much. They were actually, a lot of people were dumping trash in them and vehicles, and he got into conservation out of necessity of cleaning up the areas that he was exploring. And this is back in the 70s. When I was about 8 years old, I would say that's when I really started to kind of comprehend all of the amazing work that he was doing in water policy for the state of Florida, and I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps. I made my wrote my first documentary script and memorized it and starred in my first little documentary or short film at the age of 8. That was like my first project with my dad and first step into the conservation world.
Yeah, I mean, I know, everybody in a way has a different journey of how they get into this world. Yeah, I mean, whether you're just born in Florida or you were born into just a family of conservationists and or you find it at an older age, which is a little bit more of how I got into this space. Yeah, it's really interesting to get to see the different journeys of how people get here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we have a gator.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's, I think, that's the female that usually I think is on that island
just
over there.
by the judge of the
Yeah.
2 foot of tail. Now I can see the rest of her. Very cool. We can point that B-roll camera right at her. Heck yeah. So you can actually, I love that you can actually see the framing of the camera too. So, oh yeah, we're getting close. I'll back us up.
It's interesting because a lot of the alligators at the top of the river are usually very, obviously you don't want to bother them, but are very, very accustomed to people paddling to them, checking them out. But,
right.
But yeah, you want to be mindful and not get too close.
Yeah, but anyways, back to ownership. Yeah. I think that our first moment, our moments connecting with our springs or just nature in general, in a positive way, are so transformative and can really kick off the another gator can really kick off your journey into being a conservationist. We, like you said, one of the first things that we see is trash, or we see high capacity of people and foot traffic damaging our trails or our waterways or springs. We see development and urban sprawl, and our nature, when we care about nature, is to do something about it.
I think for me, growing up in the Crystal River area, and I remember paddling back into the Three Sisters before that was government owned, and having the houses back there. I don't know if did you ever visit it when it was like that, prior to? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember growing up, just going into the Three Sisters, and at the time it was very much just a hidden gem. Really, only the locals knew about it.
Right.
And it was a popular
I
spot.
remember those days. Yeah.
I remember being young, and they had the people who had houses back there. There was one. It was I think it's the Pretty Sister, or whatever, the one on the right when you first enter in. They had a floating dock over there, over that spring, and the people who had the property. And I remember being stupid little kids, we would dare each other to go up on their property and trespass, and you go up on their property and try to really quick run and jump off the dock, and then the owners would come out and they'd have...
Don't try this at home.
Yeah, don't do this. But it's a very different time. But yeah, they would come out with their shotgun, just kind of threatening you, but not do anything, obviously. But yeah, I just remember that as a kid, and obviously it's very, very different now, but and floating down the Rainbow River and doing the tubes out there. Yeah,
core memories for sure.
But yeah, so I'm actually interested with you growing up in this realm. What was probably similar to that I just described? What was probably, it could be either good or bad of what you've seen, but what's one of your first memories of the springs that was just really vivid for you?
Wow. Yeah. So I have so many examples of because I grew up going to so many springs as a kid because my dad was exploring and mapping all their cave systems. So I saw, all of the area I grew up was the Santa Fe River and the Swanee River and its springs for the most part. So it was, Little River is a great example. Troy Springs is another example. Troy Springs used to be crystal clear blue, 70-foot drop down to the cave entrance and crystal clear. And for those listening that don't know what Troy looks like these days, we're lucky if it even has enough flow coming out of it from the Florida aquifer to push back the river water of the Swanee River. And when it does have enough flow, it's tinted green because it's mixing with that brown water and the groundwater, and that results in a green hue. Or there's river intrusion coming into the cave system because the land around it is being overpumped within that spring shed. And so that spring is a massive first magnitude spring that looks completely different than it did when I was a kid.
I've actually never been to Troy Springs, so I've seen photos.
It's a very popular freediving spot.
Okay.
It's one of the best, but gosh, we can't dive it but for a quarter of the year these days. And you used to be able to go to it every day of the year, except for during major floods. And
the visibility is so bad, and it's not.
It stinks. It's so sad. And my list of dead or dying springs is hundreds long. Hundreds. I could sit here for a while. And the definition of dead or dying spring is very subjective. But another thing, what I mostly see is lots of algae buildup. That green slimy stuff that's stuck on the rocks, and that you'll even see on the backs of turtles and manatee. And all over the healthy grasses that you'll see, the eel grasses and the tape grasses that we're paddling over today. And
that stuff is all natural, like it's meant to be in the river, correct?
Yes.
But
so algae
is
not at the amount that it is. It becomes unhealthy when it starts choking out, growing to the extent that it is starving the other vegetation, the healthy vegetation, plants, of its light. And that is one of the reasons that we'll see all of these grasses that are manatee and turtles and all of the other animals in the spring ecosystems love disappear. Is the starvation of light due to algae overgrowth. And then we'll also just see foot traffic. We'll see lower dissolved oxygen levels, which is because of the algae overgrowth as well. And also age of the water too. So there's some. I don't want to get too far into that. And then we have over pumping. So we have water quality issues and water quantity issues.
I typically, with the algae, like as a guide, I try to describe it to people, because sometimes they're just like, oh, like,
it looks pretty, it's green.
It looks fine, there's not an issue, like you're just kind of over exaggerating, you don't really, like, whatever.
Right, and the water's still clear, right? It's
yeah.
fine. It's we could drink this water, we can swim in this water, and it's just fine. That is not the case. At all.
I typically describe it as people like having a plant that requires a lot of sunlight, which I know that eelgrass requires a lot of sunlight. And throwing a blanket over it. Like if you have a house plant that needs sunlight and you throw a blanket over it and you expect it to grow, like what happens to that plant?
It's a perfect example.
So that's typically how I describe it on my tours, but
I love that. I love that. That's a really great analogy.
But so let's talk a little bit about like your work. So you work for the organization Conservation Florida. Conservation Florida, I know like one of their main missions, and kind of just to sum it up, like what do you guys do? You try to protect and buy land. Why does that matter for our springs? Like you grow up around the springs, and that's, I mean, mostly your goal, what you're trying to do is protect the springs, and I mean obviously land as well, but why does that matter to protect the land for our springs?
Well, to answer your first question about what we do at Conservation Florida, you're correct in a way we do buy land. What we really do at the end of the day is we help landowners create conservation easements on their property. And so a conservation easement, this is a great question, is at the end of the day, it's selling the development rights of, on a piece of your property or on all of your property. And there's certain terms that come with that, but it's in perpetuity. So you sell the development rights of your land forever. Okay. There is no getting out of it. And that is what we do. Mostly what we do. We do also buy land, but our ultimate goal is to conserve lands, and we work from Pensacola all the way down to the Keys, and we focus in what's called the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Okay. We do occasionally step outside of the Florida Wildlife Corridor as needed if it's a priority area. Yeah. But the Florida Wildlife Corridor is where we do a lot of our work.
Soft shell, or is this snapping turtle?
Oh my gosh, that's a massive soft shell. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's one of the biggest I've ever seen.
That's huge. I know.
Get us over it. Get it over.
I know.
Come on.
I
know you got this.
I got you.
They're so skittish.
I know they are.
Oh my gosh!
I thought this was a common snapping turtle. This guy's huge.
It's coming up.
This one's massive.
That's a huge female. Oh, she's going into the grass. Here, I'm putting my phone underwater.
I was about to do it, but
I do not care. Oh, I gotta zoom out.
Yeah, she's huge.
She's massive.
Like, I mean, I zoom out here all the time.
This is a brand new phone.
Yeah.
I don't even care. The footage is more important. Where'd she go?
Right here, in front of me.
Oh my gosh. Holy camole. Guys, I'm out of the frame. I'm leaning out of the frame.
It's all good. Yeah. I know you know about like my recent obsession with turtles, so like this is crazy. And
I love it.
You do turtle surveys,
I have an ongoing obsession with turtles, as you can tell. Look at that! Oh my gosh! I wonder if she's been tagged at one of the turtle surveys here. We'll have to reach out to the Dr. Jerry Johnston and
she's like really
Institute. Oh my gosh.
Like chill for, I mean, yeah, like you said, they're very skittish typically, and she just doesn't care.
You know what I just realized? I can leave my camera facing down on the...
Yeah, on the bottom, yeah. If we paddle right over, yeah. You can take video pretty well just like going through the kayak. But for me, like, I don't like paddling over top all the time. Like, I mean, yeah. But...
I'm sorry, I just had a moment back here where I was like, why didn't I think of this
A clear
sooner?
kayak, yeah. You gotta,
it's like one big housing.
Yeah,
honestly,
it is.
Any camera in it, so long as you can face it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about stuff getting wet and...
Josh, you're just a genius.
Normally, if I want a cool shot of like the spring or like a event, I'll go over top of it and just have the video going, just paddling right over top.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I thought about bringing my mask and, you know, because you never know when you're going to need it to lean over the side of a boat and check things out.
I have mine in my bag. I always have it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was like, wow, I think we're going to be in a clear kayak, so maybe I won't have to, but, you can catch me any day with my face leaned over any boat. Yeah. Any boat.
The same exact way.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. So what were we talking about?
Yeah, I don't even know. I gotta check our notes because I have no idea what the heck we were talking about.
That was a really special encounter. There's no way we could.
That was the biggest soft shell I've ever seen. That was crazy.
It was a good tie of one I've seen in the Ishituckney recently during the turtle survey.
Yeah.
But maybe bigger. You know, you don't know until you catch them and weigh them and.
Is it question? So like, are you allowed to just? I mean, obviously you're not hurting them or doing anything. Can you just scoop a turtle out of the water? Does it like certain species or is it like...
It's frowned upon.
Okay.
No. You do not want to interfere with wildlife in any way, shape, or form if you can avoid it. Yeah. But when I am doing turtle catching, it's under permit for science. Okay. And it's a very controlled environment with some of our world's leading aquatic turtle experts, and it's honestly an honor to be involved in that sort of citizen science effort, and I cannot recommend it enough in terms of falling in love with our wildlife and nature, learning about them, and you know, propelling yourself on the path of conservation. There's no better way than getting involved in a citizen science initiative with one of our nonprofit organizations or research teams working to protect wild Florida.
I know I've been wanting to, yeah, like get involved doing stuff like that because I think it's, yeah, it's just a fun and cool way to get to be a little bit more, like you just kind of see a different side, and instead of just like paddling around, you kind of get to see the scientific and research side of things, and I'm sure you learn a ton doing those things.
Oh, so much,
yeah.
so much. That's really, the more you learn, the more confident you are to speak on the topic, and the more you can share about it. And that is the most impactful way to approach conservation, is to kind of find what you're passionate about and learn about it, and then share about it, because your passion is going to shine through, and people will find it inspiring.
We just talked about it this morning.
Yeah, we inherently find, you know, what other people are passionate about inspiring. You know, we can feel that energy, and yeah.
To go off of that,
Yes.
top 3 people who like inspire you.
Oh my gosh, I didn't prepare for this one, Josh.
I know, we were talking and it just came to me.
Oh man, okay, give me a second on this one. One person who I would say the first person that I'm endlessly inspired by is Eric Bendick. Okay. He was the director of Path of the Panther, National Geographic's Path of the Panther. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it on Disney Plus, Nat Geo. It's on other streaming services as well.
I think I watched it on Hulu, but yeah.
On Hulu, yeah, you can watch it just about anywhere. The reason that Eric is so inspiring to me is because he is an incredible conservation storyteller, and he focuses on impact, and that is something that I value greatly. I'm an impact-driven conservationist at the end of the day, and that's why I've gotten into so many different things with conservation and wear so many caps, is because I'm all about what's going to make the most impact. Yeah. And in a way, I'm a generalist or an ologist, right?
Like to do it all and whatever's going to stick with people.
So Eric Bendick would be one of them. Okay. I'm going to take a step in a different direction here, and instead of mentioning one person, because sometimes a lot of times it takes a team, team to make really impactful conservation happen. And I would say the crew behind the film crew and the campaign crew behind Kiss the Ground. Okay. It is another documentary that is about regenerative agriculture and land conservation and climate change, and that has been an endlessly inspiring piece to me. Yeah. They just came out with another film, Common Ground, and it's doing its rounds in theaters as we speak. Awesome. And
last one more.
Yeah, last one?
Yeah, one more.
I would have to say Miss Tracy Dean.
Okay.
My boss. Oh, we got another gator on the left. Little guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's actually a second one. If
you
look.
Yep. Look at that.
He's got his head like looking right at us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we can wait until we get some footage of this. Look at them, just stacked, youngins. Look at that cute.
I know.
Don't tell me alligators aren't cute. Look how adorable.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's pretty freaking cute.
It's so cute. Like, objectively cute. Yeah.
There is no opinion in that. That is a fact.
No, that's a non-negotiable. If you don't think alligators are... No, I'm just kidding. We all have our fears,
right?
It's
a proven fact.
Yeah, it's a proven fact. Yeah. So my last would be my incredibly inspiring boss, Miss Tracy Dean. Tracy is the president of Conservation Florida, and she is a powerhouse and female leader in the conservation world in Florida for land conservation. The amount of accomplishments that Tracy has had in her career is just awe-inspiring, and is the reason that the entire team at Conservation Florida is the reason that I wanted to work with Conservation Florida from the get-go. But Tracy is an incredible leader, and we need those leaders in this world, and and if I could just pick one word, it would be just powerhouse.
Okay, cool. It's an easy one, but it's, very cool.
Yeah.
So when it comes to just conservation as a whole, or I guess more specifically talking about the springs, what would you say is like, because there's a lot of different directions you can take conservation with places like the springs. What would you say is like the right direction to take advocacy and conservation with Florida springs?
Right. Yeah. I think that's a tough one. I think that every angle that we approach environmental conservation as a whole is valuable in a way. A lot of what we see in springs conservation is effective. I think that we can always use more collaboration and communication between individuals and organizations and politicians and agencies across the board. I think that keeping open lines of communication and remaining positive and focusing on positively educating one another and not polarizing is something that we cannot get enough of. I also have this hunch that we should be looking at springs conservation in a different lens at times than just directly saying, oh, we need to protect our springs or save our springs.
Yeah.
What we really should be the most worried about in the issues facing our springs is what our actions are doing to our water quality and our drinking water.
So what do you mean by that? Like, explain that.
Yeah, so what we put on our land, what we pave over and develop, is directly impacting the health of our drinking water and the water in the Florida aquifer and the Biscayne aquifer and all aquifers of Florida. But those are the main two.
So you're saying less focusing on, hey, save our springs. I mean, like, it's a great message and you want to rally that.
We do. We want to maintain that messaging. But I would like to see us being the springs conservation community, the water conservation community, freshwater conservation community, and land conservation, focusing on how it's impacting, it's impacting our health.
Yeah.
And it's not just impacting our spring ecosystems, which we of course need to protect for so many reasons. We want to protect our wildlife and we want to protect the places that we love recreating. But this is where we're getting our drinking water. Whether it's through city or it's through a well that's directly tapping into the aquifer, it is directly impacting our health. And what that does is it puts a lot more pressure on us to change our actions if we know, because there's this out of sight, out of mindedness that happens with water quality issues, especially when we're dealing with aquifers around the world. If we can't see that we're standing on top of the most productive aquifer in the world, then we don't understand that what we do on the actions on land are impacting our springs, our rivers, our streams, our oceans, and our drinking water. And the Florida aquifer is, if we can't get it right with the Florida aquifer, and I think we have the best chances of getting it right with the Florida aquifer, but if we can't get it right here, then I don't know what we're going to do. We have, like I said, the most productive aquifer in the world. We have these incredible springs and rivers and lakes that we recreate on, also driving that movement to protect, restore, conserve. It's ours. I think that our state has the ability an opportunity to set an example.
Yeah, I was gonna say
for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
On how to right this wrong. The Florida aquifer has so much water. It's estimated that in the Florida aquifer it's 32% of all of the water of the Great Lakes combined. I mean, quadrillions of gallons.
So I know you said like we need to focus on water quality because the water quality impacts just the health of communities and just future generations. How do you take that concept of we need to focus on water quality? So as a guide and even for somebody myself who like creates content around this stuff and trying to bring awareness to it, I feel like I almost kind of struggle with that messaging because when people come out on tours and they're whether they have they just come out here to visit the river and they're on a rental or they're learning from a guide, they see the pretty water and they don't think that anything's wrong just because it is beautiful. And even today when it's very different from what it looked like 50, 100, 500 years ago,
Right.
I mean, it looks very, very different.
Yeah, but it's still beautiful, right?
Yeah, so like, I mean, yeah, the idea behind the messaging of how do you communicate that to people when they come out here and see that there's nothing wrong. Like, I mean, they, like, obviously people who are within the community that come out here regularly, they can see the changes over the 5, 10, 50 years, and they're like, wow, like, this looks very different from when I was a kid.
Right.
But for somebody who's maybe just on vacation, we have tons of tourists here in Florida, how do you get them to feel that, like we need to do something about
The sense
this,
of urgency?
Yeah, and communicating that, yeah.
Right. I know it's that's such a good question, and it is a real challenge to face, especially when you're trying to show people, the beauty of these places and give them a good time and help them enjoy it. But the answer is simple. It's very much the vegetables under the meat situation, where you want to inspire them. You set out to inspire them. You show them the beauty and the biodiversity and the fun things, and then you start to paint the picture of what is out of sight for them, right? And that's what I do. That's what I do as a photographer and a cinematographer, and that's what my father did as well. We both take cameras into the aquifer and photograph and film the aquifer itself. And you don't need to do that to paint the picture, but you can use imagery of grasses being drowned by algae. Share what the impacts do look like. Have photos on your phone, videos on your phone, or be able to point out real life examples while you're on the water.
Yeah. For people who, because obviously you get a spectrum of people that come out here doing tours. You get people that just want to come out here and get their Instagram picture.
Right.
And then you get some people who just are completely unaware of everything. And then you get some people who maybe have some sort of prior knowledge on this stuff. And I don't know, for me, I get really excited about the people who get excited. And one of my biggest things for people who want to kind of have a picture of a picture of a dying spring, I tell them to search like White Springs.
Right. That's White Springs is a great example. White Springs is that's great, Josh.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's like the poster child of a dead spring.
Yeah, the future of springs if we don't do anything.
And I know you know this about me, and we've had this conversation in the past, but for your viewers, when you're approaching these conversations with your friends and your family, some people are not going to be open to receiving, and you're going to have to use your best judgment on whether you breach that topic.
Yeah.
And use your common sense. Some people are not going to be open to receiving that information. I encourage everyone to focus on the people who are open to receiving it, who are inspired and are asking the right questions, because those are the folks who are going to take that information beyond your conversation. And that's not to say that there aren't times that we should really dig in with people who are stuck in their ways, but just use your best judgment, because your own energy as a conservationist is not an infinite resource.
Yeah.
You have to be mindful of your energy and how you're spending it.
It's very emotionally and mentally draining when you're,
it can be.
Yeah.
And that's why you see so many people who get what's called like ecological anxiety or depression, and
I've definitely felt that.
And feeling very overwhelmed. And the way to combat that is to be just like any other situation in your life that's overwhelming you. Remove yourself from that.
Yeah.
Take a step back. Take a breather. Stop looking at the news.
Yeah. Get off social media.
Get off social media. Step back into nature. I mean,
you're giving life tips right here.
Right?
Not even conservation.
Yeah. I mean, this is life. This is how
yeah.
we are nature. We are nature, and we have to learn, especially as the impacts are increasing to our environment. We have to learn how to navigate that.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up around with my dad's work. I grew up around some pretty depressing stuff. Like as a kid, I was exposed to it. In a way, I was desensitized to it. I'm used to it. I'm used to hearing the bad news. But when I started really digging in deep into my adulthood, into my conservation career, I went through this exact same thing, and I got into a mindset where I couldn't go to the springs without being depressed.
Yeah.
And when I was trying to reconnect with nature, I was just seeing all of the things that we were doing wrong.
Yeah.
And I had to take a big break from my work.
Yeah.
I had to take a step back from the pressure I was putting on myself to make change now. Giving myself that time was the best thing I ever did. So give yourself the time that you need, and space out your binges on conservation knowledge and the efforts that you're making to make an impact. So.
Everything that you just said, like I've experienced that, and it's not anything that you definitely do not, like, like, okay, there are things that are hurting, but like when you really dive deep in these topics and like learning, and for me, I was gonna say, I like hyper fixate on stuff, like when I pick up like with the turtles right now, like I'm just like learning everything I can. But so we got another soft shell.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love them so much.
When you go down that rabbit hole of the threats and things that are negatively impacting the springs, it definitely can lead you down a dark road. And not saying that everything is doom and gloom, but it can be very discouraging at times.
Right.
But that actually kind of leads into what I was going to get for my last question. I'm actually stealing this from Mason with the
Florida Uncut.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be, I probably not, I don't know, I just felt like it was a good place to take this. So there are a lot of things that, again, can be somewhat discouraging when you look at the small battles here and there of conservation. So when you zoom out and you're taking a look at what is happening in regards to conservation in Florida, what is something that inspires you? Like what keeps you hopeful and kind of continues to put coal in the furnace for you?
Right, this is such an important question, and I never do an interview without answering this.
Yeah.
Hope, what you're touching on is hope. Where do I find my hope? Where do we find our hope?
Yeah.
And when I look around, I see it everywhere. I see it in what we're doing right now, the fact that you are interested enough to be putting together a podcast. And I find it in the community of conservationists that I've had the privilege of being a part of and inspiring and being inspired by.
Yeah.
But also in the political climate, I see the most funding we've ever seen for land conservation this year alone.
Yep.
Hundreds of millions of dollars,
billions.
you know.
Looking at that number, you're just like,
right?
Yeah.
And that's just incredible, and that right there is in part thanks to the Florida Wildlife Corridor.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the Florida Wildlife Corridor is an 18 million acre corridor. The purpose of it is to protect our water resources, wildlife, habitats, genetic diversity in wildlife, and it runs the entire span of our state, right?
Okay.
And 10 million acres of that, this is great news, but 10 million acres of that corridor has already been conserved. We have 8 million acres to go. And Florida was actually the first state in the United States to create a wildlife corridor. And this idea of a corridor was, thought up back in the early 90s. And it's a testament to how long some of these campaigns and these efforts can take, and not to give up.
Yeah.
Because we are seeing great impacts coming from the corridor itself. But and ever since the corridor was established and signed into legislation in 2021, we've seen 12 other states follow suit. And the goal is to connect all of those corridors between states. National wildlife corridor, can you imagine?
Yeah.
That's the
awesome.
goal. And that's what we're working for in land conservation.
And that started all here in Florida.
All here in Florida.
That's, incredible.
Right.
Really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess, do you have any last things that you would want to share before we close out here?
So I guess to conclude, I want to touch on call to action, what we can do. We can, as a community, we can come together and educate ourselves, push that messaging of land conservation, water conservation forward. Connect with the organizations that you're drawn to. Conservation Florida is doing such impactful work. We've had a part in conserving over 100,000 acres of land across the state, 10,000 acres just last year, which was a monumental year for us.
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful group of staff and volunteers and programs to join in on.
So you guys are always looking for people to
always
get
looking
involved.
for people to get involved on, and anything from cleanups to fence removal to events and education. If you want to learn more about land conservation and about Conservation Florida, and have an impact on protecting land statewide, one of the best things to do is volunteer at one of our events with me.
Yeah, you can meet the legendary Tessa Skiles.
yeah. And Josh, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a list of resources to plug into the YouTube description.
If you guys are interested in learning how to get involved or ways that you can help, we'll add that in the description, so then you can see what awesome resources and things that you can do to help us out. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Tessa, for coming out. I know anytime we ever talk, I learn so much from you, and very appreciative of you and our friendship, and excited for the future. So
ditto. Thank you for having me out, Josh.
Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to many continued conversations and questions from your audience.
Oh,
Please shoot us questions, and reach out to Conservation Florida as well.
Yeah.
It's a huge priority of mine and of our organization to be there for you guys to answer these more complex questions and topics. So.
Yeah, I know for me personally, like, not to keep dragging this on, but like I try to respond to like every DM. Just because, like, if you're not communicating, who cares about the platform if you're not able to have dialogue and continue that conversation? So, I know you're the same way, because that's how you and I got connected. I just had a burning question, and I shot you my thoughts, and you responded. And so I like to, for knowledge that I have, I like to try to share as much as I can with people as well. So
this is an ongoing conversation.
Yeah,
there's no right or wrong way to do it. And just look for support when you need it.
Yeah.
That's my main takeaway here.
Just reach out, ask questions.
Reach out, ask questions. We don't get here without asking a whole lot of questions and being curious. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Tessa, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.